Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Love, Power, and the Fall of Empires. A story where love shook empires, loyalty turned into betrayal, and history merged with myth. A tale retold through the scrolls of historians and the pen of Shakespeare. In the grand theatre of world history, few stories burn with such tragic brilliance as that of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony. Their love was not a simple romance. It was a weapon, a throne, and ultimately, a grave. This is the true tale of how a queen of unmatched cunning and a general of iron will defied Rome, lived like gods, and died in legend. It's a journey through ancient Egypt, the Roman Republic, war, propaganda, and the echoing power of storytelling. If you love stories where passion collides with politics, don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what's next. In 44 BCE, Julius Caesar lay slain on the marble floors of the Roman Senate, assassinated by those who feared he sought to become king. But thousands of miles away in Alexandria, the ripples of his death reached the palace of Cleopatra VII, the last Ptolemaic ruler of Egypt. Cleopatra was no ordinary monarch. Fluent in over 9 languages, she was both a political mastermind and a living deity to her people. She had once seduced and allied with Caesar himself, securing both her throne and a son, Caesarion, believed to be the dictator's only heir. But with Caesar dead, the future of her kingdom trembled. Rome, in chaos, was split between his loyalists and new power-hungry leaders. Into this vacuum stepped Mark Antony, Caesar's closest general and friend, now one of the 3 triumvirs who ruled Rome. When summoned to meet him in Tarsus in 41 BCE, Cleopatra didn't arrive like a subordinate seeking favor. She came as a goddess, dressed as Isis, perfumed with exotic oils, and surrounded by music and incense. According to Plutarch, her arrival was a performance. She sailed up the river in a barge with purple sails, her servants dressed as cupids. Antony was captivated, not just by her beauty, but by her confidence, her strategy, her ability to stand beside Roman power, not beneath it. In Shakespeare's version, the moment becomes immortal. She did lie in her pavilion, cloth of gold of tissue, or picturing that Venus where we see the fancy outwork nature. History began to blur with theater, and Antony was no longer just a Roman general. He was Cleopatra's consort, and Rome would never forgive him. Their union deepened rapidly. At first, Cleopatra and Antony's connection was political, each using the other to fortify their position. But soon, it became a romance of unmatched intensity. They lived like gods. Cleopatra bore Antony 3 children. Together, they held royal processions, celebrated Egyptian festivals, and created a private society called the Inimitable Livers, a circle devoted to pleasure, wine, and philosophy. Antony spent the winters in Alexandria, embracing Egyptian culture and customs. But to Rome, this was treason. Antony was married to Octavia, the noble Roman sister of his co-ruler and rival, Octavian, the future Augustus Caesar. His decision to divorce Octavia and gift vast territories to Cleopatra's children was seen as a declaration of war. Rome did not see a romantic hero. It saw a fallen general, corrupted by an exotic seductress. The Roman Senate was flooded with propaganda. Cleopatra was the Eastern harlot, Antony, her drunken puppet. Shakespeare captures their lavish indulgence in his tragic drama, Antony and Cleopatra, but also the looming sense of doom. Kingdoms are clay. Our dungy earth alike feeds beast as man. Antony and Cleopatra weren't just lovers. They were rulers trying to build an empire of their own, separate from Rome. But in doing so, they threatened everything Rome stood for. So Octavian turned their love into a weapon. He crafted a narrative in which Antony had abandoned his Roman identity, forsaken duty for lust. It wasn't just a smear campaign, it was a prelude to war. Remember to subscribe for more historical deep dives like this. We bring you the truth behind the myths. By 32 BCE, the storm broke. Rome officially declared war, but not against Antony. They declared war on Cleopatra, emphasizing her role as a foreign queen threatening Roman sovereignty. It was a masterstroke of propaganda. The battle was no longer political, it was civilizational. Rome versus the East. The decisive clash came at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. Cleopatra and Antony's combined fleet met Octavian's forces in the Ionian Sea. But things quickly unraveled. Cleopatra's ships were better suited for transport than battle. Antony's fleet was scattered. And at the height of chaos, Cleopatra's ships began to retreat. Why did she flee? Some believe she thought the battle lost. Others think it was a prearranged signal. Whatever the truth, Antony followed her, abandoning his remaining forces and sealing his doom. The retreat wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. A Roman hero had chosen his lover over his duty. Octavian seized the moment and declared victory. In Shakespeare's version, the choice becomes poetic regret. You did know how much you were my conqueror. You were my crown, my heart, my soul. Antony and Cleopatra returned to Alexandria, isolated and hunted. Their empire had crumbled, but their legend had only just begun. The noose tightened. Octavian's legions marched on Alexandria. Inside the palace walls, Cleopatra prepared for the inevitable. Rumors soon spread. Cleopatra was dead. On hearing this, Antony, grief-stricken and believing he had lost everything, fell upon his own sword. As he lay dying, he was told the truth. Cleopatra lived. He was brought to her chambers, bleeding, broken. In that moment, ancient history and romantic tragedy intertwined. Plutarch wrote that as Antony died in her arms, she tore at her clothes, sobbed uncontrollably, and cried, "Don't leave me in this world alone." Shakespeare's Antony pleads with his final breath. I am dying, Egypt, dying. Let me speak a little. Days later, with Antony gone and Octavian threatening to parade her through the streets of Rome in chains, Cleopatra chose her end. Dressed in royal robes, adorned with jewels, she lay upon a golden couch. Whether by asp, poisoned comb, or hidden elixir, she took her own life. Her final act was one of sovereignty. She would die as pharaoh, not as prisoner. Give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me, Shakespeare writes. It was the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the end of Hellenistic Egypt, and the birth of Rome's empire. With Cleopatra and Antony dead, Octavian returned to Rome, not just as victor, but as Augustus, the first Roman emperor. But he didn't just conquer them with swords, he conquered them with story. He rewrote their love as sin, their passion as weakness, their rule as blasphemy. Antony became a traitor, Cleopatra a sorceress. Their children were wiped from memory. Caesarion was executed. Their love was no longer a bond, it was a warning. This wasn't unique to Rome. History is often told by the victors, and victors shape villains. Cleopatra's image was weaponized, used to show the dangers of foreign influence, female rulers, and unchecked passion. Yet centuries later, William Shakespeare reclaimed their story, not as propaganda, but as poetry. He saw Antony not as a fool, but as a man torn between duty and desire. Cleopatra not as a temptress, but as a queen whose power was inseparable from her femininity. Shakespeare gave them back their humanity, and in doing so, he ensured their immortality. Their story teaches us not just about ancient politics, but about how narrative shapes power. Who controls the story controls the legacy. And if you've made it this far, subscribe now for more untold truths from history's shadows. Even now, Millennia later, the story of Cleopatra and Mark Antony continues to shape culture, politics, and art. Cleopatra has been portrayed as villain, goddess, queen, lover, and liberator. From Elizabeth Taylor's Hollywood glamour to Beyoncé's visual nods to her power, Cleopatra remains a symbol of female authority and mystique. Antony, the fallen warrior, echoes in every tale of the soldier who lost everything for love. But beneath the glamour, their story is about control. Control over land, over image, over history itself. In today's world, where media and politics are intertwined, the propaganda surrounding Cleopatra and Antony feels eerily modern. Think about how women in power are portrayed in tabloids. Think about how love lives are politicized. Think about how nations craft enemies by attacking their identities, not just their policies. Cleopatra's story reminds us that the way a woman uses her intelligence, her beauty, her influence, is still controversial today. Antony's downfall is a lesson in the clash between personal loyalty and public duty. And both remind us, empires rise and fall, but stories last forever. Their love did not survive, but their legend did. In the end, Cleopatra and Mark Antony didn't just live history. They became myth. They remind us that power without love is cold, but love without strategy is doomed. They were not perfect. They were flawed, passionate, reckless. And in those flaws, we find something deeply human. So next time someone tells you history is just dates and battles, remember this: a queen, a general, a kiss, and the fall of an empire. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe and join us as we bring forgotten figures and ancient truths back to life. Until next time, remember, the past is never truly gone. It's just waiting to be retold.